Dana is not opposed to the possibility of John Jones versus Francis.
Wow, that would be huge.
Huge.
Joe Rogan told Francis Ngannou on the Joe Rogan Experience that a fight with John Jones is still possible, and the UFC and PFL might be working on John Jones versus Francis Ngannou.
Well, one of the things that has been discussed that apparently the UFC might be open to, because the Saudis throw around so much money, is the potential of a joint promotion, a cross promotion with you versus John Jones.
Make it happen.
That is what the world wants to see. Because when you have a guy like yourself that, you know, knocks out Stipe, becomes the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion, and then through negotiation only decides to relinquish the belt. Everybody, even though John Jones is the champion now, everybody's like, yeah, but you didn't win the title against the champion. And you were the most compelling fight in the heavyweight division for sure for John Jones.
This is huge news because we thought it was over. Dana White's telling us that it's a wrap. Francis Ngannou decided to go to the PFL. He's no longer working with Francis Ngannou. And we all know Dana has shot down ideas of a cross promotion before numerous times. He has no interest, obviously, with the UFC having a monopoly over the MMA world. So what gives? Well, we've seen before that all you have to do to convince Dana White to do something he is unwilling to do is just show him the money. Dana White told us before that there will be no women fighting in the UFC.
When are we going to see women in the UFC, man?
Never.
Never? Never? All right, have a good night, man.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you, man.
And then Ronda Rousey came along. He saw the money in front of him. Now, we all know that Dana White operates on seeing money. Another example is when Conor McGregor was setting the MMA world on fire and then decided he wants to fight Floyd Mayweather. Dana White shrugged at the idea and couldn't believe that Conor would even suggest such a thing. He did not want to work with boxing.
Dana, how much any imaginable way at all Floyd and Conor get in the ring? Any scenario?
Listen, I stopped saying never. Who knows, but highly unlikely. You know what I mean?
And we all knew there was that rift back then. If you guys remember, there was a rift between MMA and boxing. And Dana White even had Joe Rogan going on SportsCenter and all of these other media outlets talking about how MMA is much different than boxing and how it's a breath of fresh air, right?
All right, let's talk about this. Let's welcome in right now boxing promoter Lou DiBella and UFC commentator and all-round personality Joe Rogan. Joe, let me start with you. Will mixed martial arts peak and fall like kickboxing, or will it become a permanent part of the sports culture?
Well, I certainly think it's a permanent part of the sports culture. It's a much more exciting sport than any of the other combat sports that are out there right now. And that's why it's here, and that's why it's the fastest growing sport in the world.
So he wanted to go up against boxing. He wanted to be on the come up, while boxing was being looked at back then as on the decline, you know. And so he didn't want to work with boxing. But again, he was shown the money, and we all know, we saw Conor versus Floyd. And Dana White was screaming at the top of his lungs, calling Conor McGregor out in the press conference after saying that Conor would never fight Floyd Mayweather.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reigning, defending UFC lightweight champion of the world, the notorious Conor McGregor!
So who is showing Dana White the money? Well, that would be Turki Al-Sheikh.
Most influential man in boxing, the greatest addition to the sport in many, many years, deleting the politics of the rough old business, bringing the kings of the game together and making the biggest and best fights finally happen.
Some of the best fights we've been waiting to see for years happen over the span of 12 months while he's been at the helm, you know, throwing out cash. Hey, what fights do the fans want to see? And he will make it happen. Well, now we're seeing it on display as, you know, he gets into the MMA world. Well, that means we might be able to see John Jones versus Francis Ngannou.
Let's talk about Jon Jones for a second, because this is a fight that we were thinking about last summer. It never materialized. It never came to fruition. And now all of a sudden, this fight is over. Francis is the champion, and Jon's talking about show me the money. And of course, I want to fight in the heavyweight division, but I also want to get it paid. I think Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou would be one of the biggest fights in UFC history, one of the most lucrative fights in UFC.
Now, I have bad news for Stipe Miocic and all of this, because it literally means everyone is looking at him as if he's some kind of cone that's in front of Jon Jones. That Jon Jones is just going to knock him over and then get to the fight with Francis Ngannou, and maybe even a fight with Tom Aspinall or Alex Pereira. But no one believes Stipe Miocic stands a chance against Jon Jones. I don't think it has anything to do with skill set. I don't think it has anything to do with, Stipe as a fighter. I think it has everything to do with Stipe sitting out for almost 4 years and not fighting. Like, he literally is sitting around and expects people to believe that he's gonna hop off the couch as a firefighter and beat Jon Jones.
Stipe then rocks him, gets aggressive, gets a little too confident, and then he nails Stipe with that left hook, an amazing left hook, right on the money.
What do you think about a potential fight with one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mixed martial arts?
Having said all of this, I think this is a great idea for the UFC. I think it's the biggest fight you can make. Obviously, Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou. And we all have to remember, Francis Ngannou never lost that belt. He is still the heavyweight champion of the world when it comes to MMA. And in order to be the man, you've got to beat the man. Jon Jones beating, Cyril Gane, who has been beaten by other heavyweights that are not even the champion, does not mean anything. You have to be Francis Ngannou, and he's one of the most dangerous fighters we have ever seen in the MMA world.
Matchup with Ngannou. Oh! Goes the Reem. Francis Ngannou has arrived.
He really is. If he hits you clean, you're going to sleep. And for Jon Jones, who is hittable and has taken damage before in fights, if he makes one wrong move against Francis Ngannou, he's gonna wake up, maybe even in the locker room. Who knows, right? Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this entire situation. I think it's great for MMA, and hopefully this is the course that we see the UFC take, and Dana White doesn't go on an ego trip and pull back from this. But let me know. Comment, like, subscribe, share. I appreciate it.